RMS Royal Edward was a passenger ship belonging to the Canadian Northern Steamship Company that was sunk during the First World War with a large loss of life while transporting Commonwealth troops. She was launched in 1907 as RMS Cairo for a British mail service to Egypt. Design and construction. Cairo and sister ship Heliopolis were built by the Fairfield Shipbuilding and Engineering Company of Govan, Scotland. Cairo was launched in July 1907 and entered service in January 1908. As built, she was 160.3 meters long and 18.4 meters abeam. She was powered by 3 steam turbines that drove 3 propeller shafts at up to 19 knots. She could accommodate up to 1,114 passengers in 3 classes, 344 in first class, 210 in second class, and 560 in third. Pre-war career. Cairo entered service for the Egyptian Mail Steamship Company, a British-owned company that provided a fast mail service between Marseille and Alexandria. The service was not successful and Cairo and sister ship Heliopolis were laid up in 1909 when the service ended. Both ships were sold to the newly established Toronto-based Canadian Northern Steamship Company, who are a subsidiary of the Canadian Northern Railway. In 1910, operating under its Royal Line brand, Cairo was renamed Royal Edward, Heliopolis Royal George, and they were refitted for the North Atlantic. Royal Edward sailed from Avonmouth to Montreal in the summer and to Halifax in the winter. At the outbreak of World War I, Royal Edward and Royal George were requisitioned for use as troop ships. World War I. Royal Edward was used to bring Canadian troops to Europe before being used as an internment ship anchored of Southend-on-Sea. On the 28th of July 1915, Royal Edward embarked 1,367 officers and men at Avonmouth. The majority were reinforcements for the British 29th Infantry, with members of the Royal Army Medical Corps. All were destined for Gallipoli. Royal Edward was reported off the Lizard on the evening of the 28th, and had arrived at Alexandria on the 10th of August, a day after sister ship Royal George had sailed from Devonport. Royal Edward sailed for Mordros on the island of Lemnos, a staging point for the Dardanelles. On the morning of the 13th of August, Royal Edward passed the British hospital ship Sudan, heading in the opposite direction. Oberleutnant zur See Heiner von Hiemberg in the German submarine UB-14 was off the island of Candelorsa and saw both ships. He allowed Sudan to pass unmolested, and focused his attention on the unescorted Royal Edward some 6 nautical miles off Candelorsa. He launched one of UB-14's 2 torpedoes from about a mile away and hit Royal Edward in the stern. She sank by the stern within 6 minutes. Royal Edward was able to get off an SOS before losing power, and Sudan arrived on the scene at 10 o'clock after making a 180-degree turn and rescued 440 men in 6 hours. 2 French destroyers and some trawlers rescued another 221. According to authors James Wise and Scott Barron, Royal Edward's death toll was 935 and was high because Royal Edward had just completed a boat drill and the majority of the men were below decks, restowing their equipment. Other sources report different numbers of casualties, from 132 to 1,386 or 1,865. An Admiralty casualty list, published in The Times in September 1915, named 13 officers and 851 troops as missing, believed drowned, a total of 864 lost. Bibliography.